Hello and welcome to Mags and Tillison. We are going to install a brand new starter on my 1970 Sportster XLH. So let's get started. We are also going to polarize our generator when we get finished. Here I'm undoing the exhaust flange bolt and we're going to pull off our rear exhaust pipe next. I just restored this bike and I was about to take it out on its first ride, and I pushed the starter button and all I got is click, click, click. So let's go ahead and install a brand new starter, and I'll take you guys along with me and we'll do this step by step. And we'll get these lower exhaust bracket bolts loose and out of the way. And we'll pull this rear exhaust pipe right off. Okay, let's go ahead and pull this rear exhaust right off here. Just like so. And now we have access. Now we're free to remove our starter. We don't have anything in our way. Always disconnect your battery as well, which I already did. Here I'm disconnecting the starter cable, and we'll get this out of the way. And I'll put the quarter 28 nut back on the starter so it doesn't get lost. Alright, next I'm going to remove the rear tappet block bolt, and I'll pull that bolt all the way out, and that's going to release the chrome starter bracket. And once I remove the starter, and then I'll take the bracket out of the way as well. Next, I'm going to pull off our chrome cover off our starter, and we'll just unscrew it and get it out of our way. And I'll put that little screw right back into that bracket so it doesn't get lost. We'll put it right back in there. Alright, then next I'll pull off the bracket. Just a couple of nuts here. And we'll pull this bracket out of our way. Okay, next I'm going to release these two long studs. They go all the way through the starter and into the starter housing. Now we are just going to back them off just enough so they release from the starter housing. We're not going to pull these studs all the way out. They're going to stay in the starter. Okay, so don't pull these out. Just back them off a few turns until they release from the starter housing. Now the whole goal here is to take the starter out in one piece. So if you pull on the starter, you pull it apart and you pull the housing off the armature, then all your brushes and springs are going to fly all over the place. Okay, here I don't care because I'm taking the starter apart and I plan on inspecting it anyway. So here when you see me, I'm going to start pulling on the starter and it's going to come apart. But the goal actually is not to take it apart, is to hold it in one piece as you pull it out. And here I have it kind of stuck in there a little bit. It's being a little bit stubborn. And I'm going to end up pulling the starter housing away from their armature, which I didn't want to do, but I was going to do it anyway. I mean, after I got the starter out and I put it on the workbench. It's just a little bit stubborn here, and I'm just shaking it around. And I'll shake it a little bit more up and down, and I eventually got it out of there. It just was a little bit stubborn. Here it is. I got the starter out. I had to shake it around quite a bit to get it out of there. I pulled the housing away from the armature, which I did not want to do, so I have my brushes and my springs laying all over the place inside the starter, and it's not a big deal. I'm going to show you guys how to put it all back together again. Now, I installed a lot of starters before, and this is the very first time that I had a starter come apart like this, but I'm glad it did. It's going to show you guys not how to do it. But it's no big deal, because we are going to put it right back together again, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So it's not a big deal, guys. Every time you film something, I do tend to rush a little bit, so something like this is bound to happen, but it's no big deal. I'm going to put it right back on the bench again, and I'm going to put it all together again. And first I'm going to install my brand new starter, and I'm going to test that first. And then we'll go right back on the bench again. I'll install the armature and all the brushes and all the springs and put the whole thing right back together again. No big deal. It did not have a gasket on the back of that starter, so I have a brand new gasket, and we won't have that oil leak after I put the brand new starter in. Okay, this is what the inside of your starter is going to look like if you shake it around enough, and then you happen to pull the housing away and your armature comes out and it pulls all your springs and all your brushes out, and you have a mess on your hands just like this one. But it's not a big deal. All we're going to do is put everything back in place, all your brushes and springs, and then I'll run the armature all the way through that and put everything together again. And no worries with this. But for now, I'm going to install my brand new starter, and I'll put this old one inside of a box and I'll rebuild it at a later date. And I'll probably buy a new armature and brand new brushes. And put the whole thing right back together again. For now, it's going into the box and onto the part shelf. Alright, this is my brand new starter. What I actually did is put some packing tape right on the end cap seams on both sides of the starter, so when I'm installing it, it's not going to come apart on me. And so after I put the new starter in, and then I'll take the tape off. Okay, now I'm going to take off the two nuts right here, and I already have my brand new gasket installed. And I'll line up the brand new starter. And I'm going to line up my two studs onto the starter housing, and I'm going to do this by hand. I want to make sure that these two studs are going to line up with the threads inside the starter housing. So I'll start it by hand because I don't want to strip any threads. So I want to feel it, I want to feel that these two studs are going to start nice and straight into the threads of the starter housing. So I'll take my time and line them up. Alright, I'll take an open-end wrench and I'll begin to turn both of these long studs in just a little bit at a time, and I'll alternate back and forth on these studs and make sure I'm starting everything nice and straight. Now that I have started both of these studs, I'm going to switch over to a socket wrench and start tightening down these studs back and forth. And I want to make sure that I tighten them down nice and evenly. And you can't torque too hard on these studs, okay, because you could snap them off easily. So you gotta be careful when you're tightening down these starter studs here. Just make sure that you just snug them up and a little bump after that. But don't go crazy on these studs, because I guarantee you will just snap one of the studs off and then you're going to have an issue on your hands. So then take your time and don't go crazy. Just snug them up and a little bump after that. And then tighten down your hold down strap last. So keep an eye on my wrench right here, that I'm not really torquing them very hard. I'm just doing it evenly. Now I think there may be a torque spec on these studs right here, and I think it's 50 pounds, but I think that's too much. But always refer to all your manuals every single time. Okay? Refer to all of your manuals. Don't take anyone's word for it. You know, it's a very smart thing to do. And always go back and look at what the factory says, and then you can't go wrong. And I always tell everyone that all the time. Sometimes they get a little insulted when I tell them to get a manual, but I'm just trying to help them out because they should always do all their own research, and I think that's the best way to do it. I'm a professional precision machinist, and I have been for a very long time, and I still look at the books, and you always learn new things. And I don't care if I'm restoring old sports cars or I'm restoring old bikes. I always open up the books and I research myself. Other information from a lot of different sources. So you have to remember, every day's a school day, right? I worked with a lot of great engineers and a lot of skilled machinists as well, and we've always shared information back and forth, and that's how we approach things. We just share a lot of information and a lot of ideas, and that's how I've always approached every project. So doing restorations on motorcycles and on sports cars has been a hobby of mine for many, many years. Okay, I took the old bracket from the old starter and I'm going to reinstall it here on my new starter so I could put my chrome cap on. And once I do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn the key on this and see if this brand new starter works properly. Now it's advertised to have a little bit more torque than the old starter, so we shall see about that. Now I thought about going with the brand new high torque starter, and those are supposed to be fantastic, but I didn't want to go through that expense. And we'll go ahead and install our chrome starter cover, and this installation will be finished, and then we'll go ahead and try it out to see if it works. And then one more thing, you don't want to over tighten your black starter cable, because that could damage your starter as well. So just snug it up and give it a little bump, and you're good to go. Alright, time to install our brand new battery. And these batteries on the XLHs are like a car battery, they're so big. Check out the size of these things. Okay, I'm going to remove the spark plugs, and I'm going to try my new starter out by not having any compression, and then I'll put the spark plugs back in, and then I'll try the new starter out with full compression. Now my old starter worked fine if I took the spark plugs out. It didn't have any compression, but once I had the plugs in, it would not work. It was simply too old, and it didn't have the power, and it didn't have the torque left in it. Okay, since the battery has been taken out of this bike, we are going to have to polarize our generator. So let's open up the official Harley Davidson manual, and we're going to see how it's done. I already know how it's done, but I'm going to show you guys how it's done in case you don't know. And here's a nice close-up of what the official Harley Davidson manual says on how to polarize your generator after you remove the battery or install a brand new generator. Okay, so let's polarize our generator. And I'm going to do it just like the book says to do it. I am not going to start it at the generator terminals. I'm going to do it right at the regulator. Just like the book says to do it. Okay, here we go. Let's polarize our generator. That's it. That's all you have to do. One quick spark and you're finished. So I just touched off on the bat and the generator terminal, and that's it. One little quick spark, no more than that, or you're going to damage things. This is a no compression check now, and I'll just give it a go here, see how it sounds. Sounds perfect to me. Now I'll put the plugs back in and then we'll try it out with the full compression. Stay tuned for next week, and we are going to reassemble our old starter and do a few other things as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really appreciate it, guys. Yikes, I really got a mess on my hands here. What a mess.